All right. Well, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon for those of you on the East Coast. I'm Casey Saran. I'm going to be talking to Jeff today. But just want to let everyone know, I actually just got married on July 8th. So I've been out of office until about 40 minutes ago for the past month. So for anyone who does moderating events, uh, it's a great way to ramp back into things to start out by doing an event. So yeah, I'm very excited about this. Jeff, why don't you start out by quickly introducing yourself?
Sure. So first of all, as we are used to, well, congratulations, first of all. And then second, want to do the virtual bingo. Make sure you can hear me and see me clearly. Everything is good before I start talking to myself. Thank you very much. So yeah, my name is Jeff Haynes. I work at Cox Communications under the Cox Enterprises umbrella. And what that means is we're focused on really our internet product, our TV product. So think about consumer brands on my side of the house. With internet's our main product. I'd work on front end innovation, which for you, those of you who don't know, there's really two types of innovation. There's top funnel, very front end, which is hypersensitive to what the customer needs are, and then downstream, which is more the execution and taking those new ideas that I come up with and then developing them to the market.
I'm sorry. Now my turn to do the check. We'll talk a lot more about that. Before we do you have any advice for? I know you're married. How long have you been
Yes.
married?
Oh, 7 years and two little beautiful girls. I'm a girl dad for sure. Proud.
Nice. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Do you have any marriage advice for me getting through the pandemic, being doing a
Yeah.
full-time job with a big team behind you?
Um, I would say, nothing groundbreaking. Going actually along the theme of what I'll talk about later is kind of sticking to the basics. Communication is key, of course. I think everybody knows that, but just like everybody knows that, doing it is much harder. So you know a lot of things, but doing them is different. What I mean by that is like if with expectations with work, work gets crazy sometimes. We're working more than ever, which is great, and it's wonderful to have supportive spouses, but I find that's extra critical now with working from home, just to be open with my communication and say, hey, I really need to work till this time tonight. Like I really need to do this in the morning, wake up early, or if I need to log on in the weekend, because I often keep it in my head. So I would say definitely communicate. I know we're all busy, and just make sure you're on the same page with kind of your what you need to do and what's on your mind. Another thing is maybe a personal preference. We're a hugging family, and so I was raised as a hugging family, and so literally every time I leave or my wife leaves, we hug and say I love you. So it sounds corny, but like it's just one of those things we just do. And same thing with my girls. Even though one is 6 and is growingly less likely to give me a kiss without me grabbing her and chasing her, but still, I recommend that.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing. I think we'll keep that in mind. Katie, my partner, is a eighth grade teacher. So throughout the pandemic, we were one thin wall away. Where she had 30 15-year-olds on her Zoom, and I'm here doing ad tech stuff. But it was so nice to be able to like come meet in the middle after like a long day of talking about just such different stuff. And yeah, just
Sure.
seeing like how each other's day was. I don't know how people do it where they work in the same industry as their spouse. We do such different things that it's like we can talk about what we're doing, but we're not really so involved that it feels kind of easier to support each other being like a little step removed.
Agreed. And I think one no, I didn't say this, but if you do have a spouse that you work with from home along with, I find it's really helpful to carve out 15 to 30 minutes for lunch. So, I do see now a trend where people are scheduling lunch meetings remotely without, providing lunch. And so it's easy to get into
Mm.
that where it's like sometimes you need to just meet with lunch, but if you can, it was really helpful for us both to prioritize eating lunch together, even if it's 15, 20 minutes, just to have that break in the day, because you just don't want it to be such a cat and mouse chase where you're just constantly working and trying to fit in your spouse and
Yeah.
what's really important.
Was your spouse working from home as well?
Yes, that was a fun time where she was working. She was on COVID relief for a large corporation, and so especially when COVID first hit, she was working 12, 14 hours a day, because she was doing COVID relief, helping basically get their retail stores the support they needed when they had positive cases. And so we had, of course, two little girls we're trying to deal with. I had a very demanding, or have a very demanding job. So that was very, very stressful time.
Yep. Yeah, we joke around that we've been together for about 5 years now, but that our pandemic years count for triple.
That's so right.
So when people ask how long we've been together, we padded a little bit because of that.
Yeah, I definitely noticed a little more gray coming in on my beard from those couple years. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And we haven't talked about this yet, but I will hit you up offline. My side hustle is I run a beard oil company. Um,
Perfect. Okay,
so yeah, I'll
let's
get you
do
some
it.
product.
Thank you.
Cool. Well, real quick for everyone here, I'm Casey Saran, CEO of Spaceback. Our company turns social media posts into display ads, and we've grown a lot since the pandemic. So we're totally remote. And we've been hiring people wherever we can find great people. Everyone's part of everyone's onboarding package is an Oculus, and we've been
Wow.
doing like meetings in the metaverse and stuff, just to make sure, as a small remote team, we have the tools to, at least invest in the future of remote learning and co-working. They're very far from being, I'd say, productive for us, but I'm telling you all this because I think scheduling time, throughout the day to talk to Katie and have some time is especially well, because we're working across so many different time zones. What time is lunch? Like, it's not 12 to 1 for a lot of our team where people are. So I'm normally inspired by, work stuff on these sessions, but I am inspired to like make sure we are having standing time. So
Awesome.
yeah, because it's just so easy to get scheduled throughout the day.
That's great.
Um, cool, Jeff. So I think one of the themes I wanted to dive into most, and maybe learning more about your org and the role here, you talk about kind of this upfront planning or the front end and the back end. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Sure, sure. Yeah. So they're quite different skill sets. So front end innovation, let's say, is a buzzword right now. It's like strategy was 5 years ago. Everybody used the word strategy. They just threw it out there to the point where it didn't mean anything. I think we've gotten to that point with innovation where so many people just kind of use that buzzword and we're being innovative, but what does that really mean? And so you know, I think it's easy to break it up into two groups. So you have front end innovation, top funnel. So if you think of marketing terms, top funnel, where you're broadening that funnel, how you're approaching the market and identifying opportunities. And then you have the downstream or bottom of the funnel, which is where, again, I said this earlier, you're taking those new products, the product ideas, and developing them go-to-market strategies and kind of pushing it out there to be experienced. So I work again on the front end side of it, which really it means that I get to be an advocate of the customer. Like I live and breathe the customer. I am from even going back to my previous couple jobs. It was my last job I worked with low income consumers, and they don't get a lot of opportunities in this world, and I learned with that job how to be really empathetic and how to understand how to put that customer first, because again, it's not who you are or who your executive team is, it's who your customer is. And if you're an executive making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, you have to make that intentional switch in your head and your thinking to think like a consumer who may be making 15-20,000 with a kid or two, single family home. And so what I do is I'm that champion of that customer. I am work directly with the insights teams, and what we do is we use primary syndicated research. We identify kind of what the state of the customer is, what the state of the from macro or micro level, and we spend a lot of time reading, a lot of time listening, and going through that research to distill it to understand some opportunities. And so like you have all this research innovation, again, funnel, picture the funnel, and you're breaking those down into different opportunities and what we call hunt areas, and whether that is, it's a dig site basically, and it's where you keep digging into. So okay, here's a nugget that I'm really latching onto with this insights that is a pain point that our customers are having with our service or in general internet service. Here is what we need to solve. Here's how then I define what that problem is through a very particular problem statement that's very intentional. So super crisp and problem statement, because trash in, trash out. So if I don't have a very clear problem I'm trying to solve, what I do is I then take that, build stimulus around it to go into an ideation, which, it could be as simple as advanced brainstorming session with your team. If you don't have a lot of resources, there's certain ways to kind of frame your perspectives to then build stimulus to say, okay, if I show you this, what's it make you think of? Capture those ideas. Or from with my company, we like to do a little bit more larger scale ideations where we bring in externals who are subject matter experts. So like we worked on a privacy and security innovation recently, and we reached out to the FBI. I reached out to some Harvard professors and just tried to understand like, oh, what is coming down the stream that our customers, our 6 million customers, would have a possible pain point or something down the road that we need to solve for. And then once we have those potential, say, 100 ideas, I start going through them all with business partners and very, very cross-functional efforts. I cannot work without all of the product teams, technology teams, marketing teams, finance teams, and we call them discovery sessions. So basically, I'm working with those different teams to say, okay, here are some ideas. Like, what do you think? And I start doing what we call pre-feasibility and start building out those ideas. By the end of, say, 3-4 weeks or whatever time we need, we end up having, say, 20 ideas that we then further develop and test with consumers. So I know that was a long-winded answer to say kind of a lot, but I think it's important to kind of build that story and picture to try to help kind of quantify, so to speak, what innovation really is, and especially front-end innovation with what I do. And I should also clarify, it doesn't have to be a new product or service. I work a lot with the marketing team, the direct marketing team, direct go-to-market team, the communications team, to identify certain products and services we already have and how we can upgrade and expand on the value proposition. So it works with everything. This is not just new products. This is for just general comms teams too.
Yep. And when it comes to kind of, you talk about the first step is really having a well-defined problem. Are you starting with, issues or hypotheses that, there might be, some leakage here and like we need to get in and or where do you start identifying where you even need to begin that process?
That's a great question. I'm telling you that is a really good point. Going back to the privacy and security work stream I just told you about, and I got to be careful. The reason I'm looking up, I'm like thinking, what can I say? What can I not say? But I think a good example of what you just asked.
My job's to try to get you to say as much as possible.
Yeah, because I can't see who's watching. So no, it's really no surprise of what consumers want with privacy and security in their digital world. It's really understanding what our place in it, like what is Cox Communication or Telecom's place in it. And so to go back to your question, we did have several hypotheses, and typically we try and have 3, no more than 3, because then it gets a little bit like we need to refine it a little more, but no less than 3, because then you also need to be more expansive and think more creatively to solve the problems. So our kind of magic numbers try and have 3, what we call hunt statements, which are how might we solve this? How might we do this? Those are our hypotheses, which is hard to say fast, I just realized. And so what we did is we had those 3 hypotheses. What I mentioned earlier about talking about or having pre-feasibility conversations with internal, external partners, those help you refine those individual hunt statements. So those 3 hunt statements went from one iteration to like 3 or 4 different steps. And then what's really important is that we were wrong on 2 of the 3 hypotheses. We realized that we do have a very secure network. We do have a lot of things we're doing, which we can improve on, don't get me wrong, but that's not necessarily what our objective was. And so we spent about 2 months on this project, and we said, you know what, 1 out of the 3 hunt statements is something that we want to pursue. Let's dig in a little bit more. Let's loop back around, start building that hunt statement again, and building that one out to 3 so that we can take that in ideation. So it's really iterative. It's really about being able to suck it up and say, hey, I was wrong, like this is fine. And actually sometimes it's rewarding to say you're wrong, and it feels good to say you're wrong. And we present to the executives and get approval to then go back and kind of get additional funding for bringing it back. They're appreciative of that, because it doesn't happen all the time, but it's just showing that we're doing our job right.
Totally. And this is so kind of peeling back the layers of the onion here. We're talking about the front end of the front end.
Right.
With the hunt statements and how you go about defining the problem. As you're iterating on the problem, what are some of the organizational concerns or challenges or communication on? I'm sure there's a lot of different stakeholders who have a lot of different opinions on where the problems are. How do you work like internally to talk about problems in a way that are collaborative with other teams instead of or seen as helpful, instead of seen it as a threat or criticism?
That's great point. I can't do my job without doing that aspect well, because I like to call my position and my role, which is very unique, because I do specialize in such a top funnel of the top funnel, really, that I like to call myself the connective tissue within the organization. So it's my job not to only push through initiatives that are active, but also understand what we've done in the past. Because the more I understand about history, which you can apply that to pretty much current state of anything, the more I understand about what we've tried before, the more it helps me be empathetic and be armed, so to speak, to talk to cross-functional members. And in our company, we have a lot of tenure. It's a great company, treats us very well, just incredible company to work for. So a lot of people don't leave, which is great in a way that I get to hear different perspectives of what we tried before. So then kind of going back directly to what you asked, there are so many ideas that we have that somebody I've talked to afterwards has said, we've done that. We did that 3 years ago. We did that 4 years ago. It failed. We could not get funding for it. And my job then is to build the case as if I'm pitching on Shark Tank again. So it's my job then to say, well, okay, I understand that didn't succeed back then. Why did that not succeed? Like, can you give me some input? And then start to peel back the onion, like you said. But also from a different angle, like I kind of bifurcate that from like, what did they feel that could have been done better? But then also second path is like, what makes today 2022 different than 2017, 2018? Because the consumer is always changing. And if you're thinking about something's not going to work now because it didn't work 3, 4 years ago, you might be thinking more about the technology and about internal operations and not about what the customer wants. So again, that brings back kind of full circle of why I always need to think about the customer first, why I always need to wear that customer hat. And again, I should say that customer is not the same. I may have 10 hats on my wall, because it depends on which, like we have affordability customers who are lower income. We have middle-class millennials is what we call them. Like we have just different segmentation and personas of different people. So based on what we're trying to solve for, I put that hat on. And so again, I just kind of sell that in. I find out why. A lot of it is capital. It's just we don't have money for it. And so then if that's the case, then it's up to me to then continue developing those ideas, put them back in front of customers. So yes, so top funnel, I'm getting insights and I'm building the case. Once I come up with ideas, I develop what we call a concept that connects our solution to their problem, and then we test it back with the customer. That helps us understand like what that impact would be. Like would they buy that? Would they be interested in it? Do they think it's unique? And then I can start to do back of the napkin modeling to say, okay, based on our 6 million customers, this is the segment that this would appeal to. Based on that, here's our incremental purchase intent, because we do pre and post testing for the concepts. And that helps me say, okay, yes, we couldn't afford it then, but now we're talking about a $15 million incremental revenue boost this year or next year. And this is why it's important now. So it's, no single case is the same. Like there's always something different. I always need to make sure I have my tool belt on when I'm talking to different people and know which team I'm going into to talk to first.
Yep. No, and this is really interesting. I feel like we're learning a lot about well, I guess my question is, where does the innovation come in? We're talking about problems and internal work, but in terms of like or is this process part of the innovation? But where do you see as as the part where innovation is most active?
Yep, I think this is key. Like you can't innovate without that top of the funnel front end. That some people call it fuzzy front end, because you're just still trying to identify what that problem is. So it's critical to have this step. It's just very difficult because again, you have to work cross-functional at all times. I cannot do my job without other teams, like I mentioned. So with that, it's key to have leadership who buys into it and not just says like, hey, we need to have an innovation manager just because it's popular or just because I want to check that box, because it's not going to work if that's the case. You have to have a mentality to say, this is how we want to improve. This is our market share, but we have these opportunities, and that's again my job. And I mean, I can go back and use some examples if you want, and just kind of talk about how we kind of step down to that approach. But does that answer your question?
Yeah, sorry, my fault for not asking a very clear question. I think what I mean is, after your team has a clearly defined, problem statement, and you've gone through, some work in terms of, what should that solution, be, or what are you going to do about that problem? what's the kind of, pass off to like,
Oh,
engineers actually, building something, or sending RFPs to vendors who could help. But,
gotcha.
when does, the problem turn into how you're addressing the problem?
Okay, understood. Yeah, so that really takes, it's how we do the handoff is what we call it. And so there's a middle area, a gray area at the business case modeling. And so the top funnel is about, building the idea, developing the concept. As you may hear people talk about concept, which is again, how does it work? Like, what is the insight you're solving? What is the benefit to the customer? What are the reasons to believe of why that would work? And then once you do the insights work and you get kind of that sizing that you can do, you start to do the back of the napkin modeling and you say, okay, is this worth it? And then we have, it's a gate at that point. So we call it gatekeeping. So we will have, we'll meet with the executive sponsor and just say, okay, here's what we've identified. And just build that case again, like Shark Tank, like build the case, like this is something we need to pursue or not pursue, shift our resources elsewhere. If they agree it's somewhere or something that we should pursue, we start then handing off, the process of handing off. And what that process looks like is downstream takes it, and then we all kind of work together with biz ops to then start looking at assumptions. And what that does is that helps you start really thinking about different assumptions that what the customer would make, that we make as a business, that some of the developmental costs, and we understand what we're really against. And that's when the downstream team starts to solve those problems, but only after it's gone through that gate and has that approval from the executives. Because like I mentioned just a few minutes ago, is if we don't have that support, everybody has so much going on. And so all of a sudden they're like, oh gosh, a new idea, like here's a new product we have to develop, but we're still trying to get this one out from 2 years ago, And so you have to have that executive support because they're the ones who allocate the resources and really make it and kind of cascade down that this is an important initiative. We need to support it. And that kind of aligns everybody. And then once that the downstream takes it in, they start including the marketing team, the let's say traditional marketing, because I sit on the marketing team, but traditional marketing who builds the go-to-market strategies, the fully developed, which markets if we're going to test in, if we're going to test and learn it, they start working directly with the technology teams to start building it or seeing if it's something we need to acquire. And then it kind of snowballs and builds. But I will say one important step is I'm very involved from the entire process in terms of like the front end, I help lead, but the bottom downstream, I'm still a player at the table because it's important for me and my team to hear the discussions, because it's really easy when the rubber hits the road to start peeling back some of that value that we developed in the top end. And because, they're hurdles basically. And so the more hurdles you have, the harder it is, of course. If you start taking away one hurdle to make it easier for you to go to market and develop, well, how do you know that one thing you just took out isn't a key piece that the customer responded to in the insights? If you take that out, we go to market, all of a sudden it crashes and burns, doesn't do anything. Well, that's because you took out the key value that we added. And so again, it's very important to be included with all those conversations to remind people like, hey, don't take that part away. No.
Yep. So it sounds like a handoff, or a handoff in the sense of like, passing the baton isn't really right here, right? Or it's not like,
Right.
you're giving it to them, they run with it, and you go, find another problem to focus on. It sounds like there is collaboration in that
Right.
process. What's the right analogy for that handoff?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that because usually as a baton, like you feel like baton, but you're right. It's almost like a coach in the ear. So it's like I'm the first.
I was thinking the
relay.
exact same thing.
Yeah. So I'm the first relay. I pass the baton, and then I immediately go to the sideline, put the earpiece in, and start talking and just listening and making sure that they're doing the right thing. And they do the same. So I want to also to add that downstream, we have a lot of partners downstream that are just key and really incredible talents that go along with my journey to then add value to say, hey, here's some key aspects that BizOps looks for. Like, let's just think about that early. And so again, I do my job with the help of them. They do their job with the help of me. And so it's really fun. It's challenging. It's if you can't deal with ambiguous kind of work, then it's not for you, but it's super rewarding. And especially when you get to see something tangible or see something go to market in a value prop or a rebrand, it's really empowering and makes you feel like you're doing something in this world.
Yep. No, and it's so fun talking to you because I'm a product manager by background, so I think about things as a product development process, and a lot of things are very similar with the needs assessment and
Yes.
but it sounds like your process is it's an organizational process as well as a product development process, and it's clear from talking to you that you have a really like you have a clear picture in your mind of, what these steps are, and you almost talk about it as it's like, and then this happens and this goes to this, and it's pretty uh it sounds like it's a process that you're able to repeat. It's not like each problem you're tackling with a new toolkit. Is this process one that you've developed internally? Have you like, studied
Of
this,
course.
and you're applying processes you've learned elsewhere, or
I
how
have,
did this all
yes.
come together?
Yes. And so I've helped with, especially with the front end, is take some of the classic design, like you said, product management, classic design thinking for agile development, and
Hmm.
taking those and kind of molded them to how we need to operate. And so I'm getting a 2-year Harvard graduate certificate in innovation. And one of the classes, there's 4 classes I have to take. One of them is design thinking. And so it's about nitty gritty, like not having resources like a big, multi-billion-dollar corporation, and just doing the work yourself and understanding. And so I learned a lot with that training to help take it back to how we do. And I would say it's very much like the top funnel. So it's about building empathy, first of all. It's about having an insights team or Googling, just being inquisitive, and what we call them discoverers and explorers, doing that part, which is step one of design thinking. So we've kept that. Defining the problem. Again, we talked about that earlier, super key. That's the second step. Ideation is third step. That's what I do. That's where it starts to change a little bit for us. That's where we start doing concept validation and biz ops work. And so again, to your point, not to get into the weeds of what those are, but I did do extensive work in taking like the classic design thinking steps and translating those to how we operate as a huge company that wasn't really built for it necessarily. And we do have other groups, like we have a new growth and development team, and with great people that I talk to regularly, that they're focused on like adjacent and like new blue ocean, like something that will be completely different, and maybe acquisition or developing new products and services that are not, that have nothing to do with what we do. And mine is more the core. And so again, that helps me then be super focused on who we are as a company, and make sure that I'm fitting new pieces into the existing puzzle.
Hmm. And it sounds like in this case, a successful execution, results in happier customers and more
Yes,
revenue and all those, KPIs that we love to
sure.
track and talk about all the time. What does successful process look like? Not just execution, but can you have a successful process that doesn't result in a successful execution?
Yes, good point. Yes, I will say, um to be open, I had that was one of the struggles I had when I first started this job. Was my job the KPIs are less about the end result in the market, because it could be 2, 3, 4 years out. And so to your point, I had to work very hard with my boss to develop kind of KPIs that were relevant to my role. And so it's really about how far we get with a certain project within the stage gates. It's how successful, talking to different owners within the company, project owners, of how successful, say, an ideation that I helped facilitate or I helped lead. Like, how did you feel about that? How, it's very soft. It's like it's full of 360s, and talking again soft skills of how I'm working and making sure that I'm not building the airplane while I'm trying to fly it, so to speak, meaning that I'm pushing people to remind them, like, here's a good step in the process, and being that grounding kind of force. Um, I will say we do have some lagging indicators that we use for KPIs that's about the customer relationship. So not NPS necessarily, but it's really about satisfaction is one of our big drivers. We have a full model, like pricing and satisfaction. So we've done extensive work to say, okay, here's 7 different things that ladder up to satisfaction. Because with telco, I mean, I could probably ask, 100 people on this call, and 90 people will say they hate their telco providers, their internet
Yeah.
providers, more than
Yeah.
likely, because
Satisfaction to them a lot of times is not hearing from them, right?
yeah, exactly. And so that makes it rough, because if you don't hear from us, then you're not reminded that we're investing billions of dollars a year in the infrastructure of your network. You are on most of the time, but we hear from customers. Internet is like breathing, because now Wi-Fi, you don't hear the AOL buzz anymore. Like, you don't have that tactical feeling that you're online. It's everything's just in the air.
I
And
don't even have
so
to plug anything in anywhere. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And so you take, I think, I do, and I think people take it for granted. So it's like, people explained it. It's like breathing. If you're out, if your internet is out, you're breathing fine, 12 months and 20 days out of the year. But those 5 or 10 days that you had 30-minute outages will ruin your year. And so we have an uphill battle with satisfaction. So that's one of the things we keep track of. And we've developed that as a proxy with our insights team. So if I have a new idea or concept that we're testing, we have developed our insights team against super smart. They were able to develop a proxy that says how an opinion of Cox translates into a potential driver of customer satisfaction. And so that's one of the kind of lagging indicators that we use throughout the process. Even though I may not see it because the product may never go to market, that's something that I'm always thinking about.
Yep. And that makes me, this isn't something we talked about before, so feel free to not tackle this one as directly, but one of the challenges I think with telecom is you don't have too many opportunities to wow your customers.
Exactly.
If you do what you're supposed to do is like cool, and that like, so how do you find ways to create those kind of experiences that actually increase someone's satisfaction? Because
Yep.
you can't just keep the Wi-Fi on and see satisfaction going up,
Not at
right?
all. And so it's so interesting. The one of the things I love about this job and brand in general is that you deal with customers because they're humans. And it was funny because I put this out on my social networks just to try and see if anybody could join that I knew and just build some excitement around it. One of my friends from a long time ago, he said, humans will human. And I just laughed at that because it's like consumers are so irrational. And so like to your point, we work hard to develop, say, one product and spend, who knows, 3 months to a year to longer to develop this one product, that we have to really be intentional to think about that the customer may not experience us solving that pain point but once a year. And so if they call us once a year, like pricing is a good example. If pricing is a huge pain point with telco, if a customer only calls us once a year because our service is perfect 365 days that year, we have no problems. We're, again, investing literally billions of dollars a year in keeping that infrastructure strong and keep internet going. But they have to call that one day to renegotiate their price, which everybody is familiar with. That puts a bad taste in that customer's mouth. And so that's why that is a big, big problem that we're trying to solve.
Did you say
But
I can renegotiate my price?
I know, right? Exactly. And so that's part of it, right? That's part of the process. Like it's the cat and mouse game. It's like, okay, we joke around that people put calendar alerts in their phones because they know that, this day they have to call to renegotiate, quote unquote, to get back on a promo price. Well, what if we got rid of promo pricing? What would that do? Well, say we did get rid of promo pricing. It may take, say, a customer called on 7/26 and we stopped doing promo prices at 7/27. That customer may not realize that until a year from now. And even then, they may feel skeptical. It may take 2 years for them to give us that value or that credit for what we just developed. So to your point, it's something we think about all the time. And so like one project I'm working on is more experience based. And it's not about, very key, is not about one idea. And when we talk to the executives, we make sure they understand this is not about getting approval for one idea. This is about a portfolio of ideas that solve different pain points that are all related, but they are all at different journeys, different points of the journey. So like one is maybe a service related idea where we help solve a pain point. Can't tell you, but I'll say we solve a pain point within the customer if they have a problem and we have to send a tech out to your home. Well, that may happen once a year, once every 3 years. So we built a journey map to say, okay, well, that problem, that move, so to speak, that idea solves the pain point at this point of the journey. This one solves it at 6 months. This one solves it at a year and a half. And then after 3 years time, here's our like NPV of like what we can expect on our ROI to say, this is now a successful portfolio of ideas that has now changed our business. So
Yep.
that's part of the fun part is like the puzzle pieces. It's some of them are about really quick ideas, like, hey, here's how we can just do a revenue generating idea to help increase your upward load speeds. Here's another one that can be a much broader, like solving for overall satisfaction.
Yep. No, and we've had talked a lot about process and a lot of kind of hypothetical. If you can you share an example of a project that you're proud of where this process has gone really well?
Yeah, I think I can solve. Yeah, I mean, I mentioned earlier about the privacy and security, and again, we did not actually go to market yet with that. We're still developing, but I will say, like, one of the things I'm proud of is that we were able to. We had a couple different projects we were working on for the past. We have been working on for about 12 months, um, differently, parallel paths and whatnot. we took a step back and said, you know what, with everything going on, everything changing, let's look at the current macroeconomic influences. Let's look at post-pandemic attitudes and behaviors that may have changed our customer mindset. And then how can we help reduce friction and inject value, is what we talk about, injecting value in our customers' lives. And so we took a step back, and we felt like we already knew that, but we were doing 3 or 4 different work streams. Let's see what's changed in the past couple of years. We found themes like people are feeling, I'll say we work with different partners, with different research partners, and we pulled together a lot of resources to take that broader view of just their lives. We saw people were feeling anxiety, uncertainty, unfamiliarity. They're vulnerable. And so with that, we found people were willing to make trade-offs, like maybe downgrading their internet tier, maybe getting rid of, accelerating their cutting of their cable, looking for discounts, concerned with personal safety and wellness, which is how we directly install, sometimes go to people's houses. Like, how do we attack that? Which then took us to kind of distill those impactful moments that people are having, and then take a step back again, go to foundational level, aggregate everything we've been working on, connect those back to those insights. Like, how do we help people with pricing, predictability? So again, we talk about people calling once a year saying, I don't know, like, why do I have to pay more than a new customer? That's uncertainty. They don't like that. It's just so many things else. There's so many other things they have to worry about. How can we help them with that? How can we keep good intent so they can trust us more? How can we adjust our tone to be more forgiving and understanding with our communications, be what we call a force of positivity?
Man,
and
it
again,
sounds like marriage advice all over again.
That's right. That's right. And when I was doing the design thinking training at the Harvard class, they one of the exercises we had to do was redesign our entire refrigerator. So the takeaway point was that design thinking can help with every aspect of your life. To your point, marriage, to how you attack your day. And so again, we had to basically redesign how our layout was inside of our refrigerator. It was pretty fun.
Funny. And I'm also realizing that being a husband is a little bit like being a telecom provider, that you don't have too many expectations, or the bar is pretty high. So I need to make sure I'm finding those impactful opportunities where I can make good impressions. Because turn this into a question: how do you prepare for anniversaries?
Oh goodness, I'm fortunate. Our anniversary is a memorable day, and so it is getting harder. 7 years we've been married now. I see it every year. It gets harder and harder. Fortunately,
Right.
bar goes higher. Fortunately, I take pride that I'm a super creative person. I have a background of like painting, oil painting, and I've always been very artistic, and so for good and for bad, I think very differently than most people, and so I almost using design thinking. I think, I'd mind map something like, hey, what would be fun this year? Mind map it, like, okay, this would be kind of fun. This would be fun. Oh, okay. That type of thing.
Yep. And that helps you be yourself too, I think, rather than just, booking her favorite restaurant every year. There's a surprise factor in that too.
That's so right. So true.
Yep. Awesome. Jeff, this has been great. I have a few more questions here, but I want to make sure people can share questions from the audience. Or Carrie, are we out of time?
We've got about 2 minutes, but I can let you wrap up your cues.
2 minutes. Okay, maybe one from the audience, if we have any.
Sorry, I'm long-winded.
No, okay. You were great, Jeff. Cool. I don't see anything coming in. So thank you so much for your time here. I've done a lot of these, and this was one that I took away a lot that I can use both professionally and personally here. So thanks so much for the time, Jeff.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Now Jeff's a hugger and I'm a hugger. So Casey, I think we have to figure out some kind of like virtual group hug on the call here.
Whoever cracks that one, that's the metaverse I want to be a part of.
All right. So we have a problem statement. So let's start working on that.
There we go.